Good evening. Hope you've had a wonderful day today. I am Janice Mathis, and I am Executive Director of the National Council of Negro Women. And welcome to a series that we call Women's Economic Empowerment. We welcome you this evening as we are here just about every Thursday evening. Tonight we've got a very intriguing topic. Are you ready for board service? And tonight, I guess we will explore with Miss Janice Robinson, who is an expert on this subject. What is board service? What is the responsibility and the obligations? And she will walk us through all of that. We're very grateful to have her. More about Miss Robinson in just a moment. But I did want to tell you that Uncommon Height Gala for NCNW will be November the 6th, and it will be hybrid, partially in person and partially virtual. You'll be hearing more about that. And on June the 19th, NCNW is sponsoring a global climate summit for young folk from all over Africa, Europe, the Americas, young Black folk talking about the environment and what those issues mean to them. At this point, I'd like to ask Mr. Johannes, who is our wonderful Director of Communications, to give us some instruction on using the GoToWebinar platform.
Good evening. If you are on your computer, you will see a menu to the right. If you are on your iPad or Surface, you will see a menu up top. There's two things I want to bring your attention to. The first is the question section. At the end of the evening, we will have a question and answer. And if you would like to type your questions in there, we will get them asked. Also, there are handouts on how to use GoToWebinar, not only from us, but we put the ones from GoToWebinar in there as well. And so you do not have to take so many copious notes because this is going to be a wonderful session. There is a PDF of the presentation. At the same time, if there's a problem or issue, this will be recorded and it will be placed upon our NCNW website and on our YouTube channel. We ask that you follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and anywhere else that you have social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johannes. We appreciate that. And we really do encourage folks to follow us on social media. It's how we know what you're thinking and able to serve your needs that much better. Janice Robinson is our speaker tonight. She is Executive Director of the United Way of Greater Atlanta's VIP program. And VIP stands for Volunteer Involvement Program. Volunteers are very important. She leads a nationally recognized leadership development program designed to connect individuals to nonprofits who are seeking board members. So she does the matchmaking. VIP's primary business model is focused on supply and demand, ensuring that boards and potential board members know about each other and take advantage of the opportunities for mutually beneficial civic engagement. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Janice Robinson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, another Janice. I love it. I'm happy to be here this evening. We're going to go on and get started. So thank you all for coming out tonight. And I really appreciate the interest of individuals wanting to become more involved in the community, and in doing so, wanting to join the board of a nonprofit. It is a huge commitment of your time to do so, and it is much needed. So I'm going to talk to you about a few things tonight, just tell you more about what board service is, what it means, and what those commitments are, and what are the best practices. And I'll tell you a little bit more about our program at United Way of Greater Atlanta. And then we'll have time for question and answers. And I tell you, I really enjoy the Q&A section of the training more than anything else, because you can ask me anything that you have, any burning questions. But just wanted to just share with you tonight about preparing to serve for a nonprofit board, what the expectations are for the board member, what it means to join the board, defining the effective nonprofit leader, and also the board best practices. And so if you have questions, we'll get to those this evening. And as Johannes mentioned, just put those in the chat and we'll go from there. But what I want to tell you is that Preparing for board service means that you're going to be serving on a nonprofit board, and that requires serious commitment and is inherent with high expectations. And I'm not sure how many people in the room are current board members, so Janice is going to share with you a poll, and please answer those questions for me and give me a little bit of information so I can understand who I'm actually talking to see if we already have those individuals out there who are currently serving or those who are really looking for their first experience. So take a moment to do the poll for me, please.
If you can see on the screen, the question is, are you currently serving on a board? 59% said yes, and 41% said no.
Fantastic. And can you go to the second question, Janice? I like the fact that we have so many people that are currently serving, because it some of the information that I'm going to share with you, hopefully it's you're putting that in practice. I will tell you that the training that we offer at United Way is best practice model. We encourage our participants to actually learn that particular model. But we do recognize that when you're serving on boards, the best practice is not always followed. So we just always like to hear what the experiences are for the folks who are currently serving.
Have you received any formal board training? 31% said yes, and 59% said no.
Okay, and great. That's what I would have expected. That's typical. And I will tell you that the facts are that as it relates to board training, most individuals who are serving on boards have not received any formal training. Many of them are joining the boards because someone suggested that they join, a friend asked, a family member asked that they serve. And so, of course, they said yes because they wanted to make sure that they were able to help with those individuals. But the facts of the day as it relates to current board service, for the numbers don't look so great as it relates to the diversity, equity, and inclusion on that, especially around diversity. The levels of board diversity have largely remained unchanged since 1994, which is not great in itself. In the nonprofit sector, women comprise the majority of nonprofit employees, but they are still there are still fewer individuals and women who are serving on board seats. And in 2017, 90% of chief executives and 84% of board members report as Caucasian. And also in 2017, 27% of boards identify as all white in comparison to 25% in 2015. And BoardSource actually did this assessment and realized that the numbers have not increased. The people of color, the minorities, have never been representing more than 18% of board service. And that was one of the reasons why in 1992, United Way VIP was started to actually assist nonprofits in getting connected to individuals, communities of color, so that they can actually serve on nonprofit boards. And you know, at the bottom line, boards are no more diverse than they were 2 years ago. And currently, the recruitment priorities are not that important to the board chairs that were questioned. And so one of the things that we really want to do is ensure that those nonprofits, especially now that so much funding is dependent upon the organizations having diverse, not only diverse clientele, but also diversity on their boards, they really are looking for a place to go to find not only people of color who can fit those positions, but also who have been trained to actually serve as board members. And so there are a few things you need to do in order to prepare yourself to serve on boards. And one is to really understand what a board of directors is. And it's really the governing body of a nonprofit. And those are the individuals who sit on the boards and are responsible for overseeing the organization's activities. And there are pros and cons to actual board service. The pros, you can receive professional development, you are strengthening the community, you're building your personal network, and you're also providing a leadership role to those nonprofits. And personal satisfaction is really key, because if you really want to work towards improving the community, then you really will enjoy the work of serving on boards. The cons, if you want to consider as a con, is that it really can be time consuming, and depending upon how much time you actually have to give to a nonprofit, you may want to think about which type of organization you want to serve. There's a financial commitment as well, and so you need to get clarity around what that would be. And there's also risk associated with serving on boards. When you're lending your name to an organization as a board member, risk can really come to the organization. If, for instance, that board is being sued for any particular reason, the individual that is held responsible for the organization is going to be the board members. So you really need to be clear about what your roles and responsibilities are prior to serving on the board. And also there could be a conflict of interest, and you need to make sure that you are aware if there are and what they could be and how you can protect yourself from that. And in some occasions, there will be a mismatch with a nonprofit where you may think that this may be a good fit for you. At a later date, you can understand that this may not be the appropriate organization. It could be depending upon the time or the financial commitment, but those are things that you need to consider prior to saying yes. And the effective board member, what does that look like? Effective nonprofit leaders advance their organization's missions, and they contribute to its successful and financial viability. And to be one, the things that you should consider is that you hold the organization's mission in high regard. So it's really, you really have to give quite a bit of consideration to where you want to lend your name in the organization in which you want to spend time and give your time and talent to as well as your treasure. You need to understand and faithfully execute the duties, and we'll talk about those in a little while. And then you need to make strategic decisions that support the organization's overall well-being, and that will aid them in future success as well. So you really need to give thought to that. And prepare to find the nonprofit that works well for you. I would say you need to do your research. There are organizations that you can find online. You can, depending upon the passion that you have, you can do a search for that to determine who they are, where they are, and what they're looking for. You can, when I say ACT, I mean that means training. You can contact United Way. There are other organizations that provide governance training as well. But at the end of the day, before you say yes, I would say you need to get that training. And also think about the type of board that you would like to join, and think about what your passion is and how you want to connect that to the nonprofit. So it's really important to do your research, to act upon that, and to think about what it is that you need to do once you've located that nonprofit. And what are the expectations? There are, in many cases, depending upon the organization that you are serving on the board of, it can look different. There are some organizations that are much more time consuming. There are some who are just governing, and then there are others that you really have to do the hands-on with. So things that you need to expect, that the expectations of you as a board member is to really pay attention to the board meetings, the attendance policy. You need to be aware of when they are, make sure you attend, and make sure that you are actively engaged in the workings of the organizations. Serve on the committees. I actually served on a board that when I started with them, they did not have any board committees, but it was a smaller board, and the committee work was really done by the entire board. So in recruiting, we wanted to make sure that we were able to have enough board members so that we can have those committees to focus on the work that really needed to be done within the organization to assist with the growth of it. So you really need to think about what committees you will need to serve on as well, which is also an additional amount of time. You need to make sure that you understand that those organizations will be looking for you to open up your personal network. That means your groups that you're connected with, including NCNW. If you're in a sorority or a sorority, then they would probably want you to connect in that manner as well. But you have to really know that one of the things that they really want is to connect to your personal network, and definitely always to donate. And the organization really can't succeed without the dollars that are needed to fund the programs. And so they'll expect you to make a donation each year to help fulfill that need. And also in doing so, you also have to understand that if an organization is looking for funding from a grant or from a foundation, more than likely the organization is going to be asked if their board is giving at 100%. And the answer should always be yes. So the organization should be asking their board members to give a financial gift of at some level. And then you also need to educate yourself about the trends that are happening within the organization in which you are serving, and so that you can make decisions that are going to help them with growing and ensuring that they have success throughout the future, not only within the organization with the staff, but also with the clients in which they serve. And then follow the policies of the organization. And it may be that you take an examination of the policies that exist and decide that there needs to be more that fits the organization as it is today. And then ask questions. You can't ask too many questions. You need to make sure that before you say yes, you need to ask the questions that are going to make you comfortable with that decision. And so I don't think questions too many. And Janice, can you hear me? Are you there?
Yes, I can.
I'm sorry, I just need to plug up my laptop. My battery is about to die. I'm sorry, I was on another call before then. Please excuse me 1 second. Okay, can you see me now?
Yes, we can. You can continue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and so the other thing is that there are expectations that the board will have of you. And so you need to understand that, again, we're talking about the expectations, what we teach in terms of the best practice, and then what the reality is. You need to make sure that the board that you're serving on does actually have its 501c3 or whatever that code is that they need to have in that status. And the most important thing that I really encourage individuals to ask and to make certain that that the nonprofit has is board insurance. Again, there may be a case where there's some risk with serving on boards, and it really should be I'd say a must that organization should have the directors and officers insurance. And I would also encourage you, if you would like to get some additional insurance to protect yourself, maybe some general liability insurance, but that's something that you can always check with your insurance provider to determine what that need is, but definitely to make sure that there's some insurance while you're serving. While it's great to want to give your time to the community to make sure that it prospers, you also want to make sure that you're protecting yourself while you're doing so. And when you're connecting with that nonprofit, one of the things that you definitely should expect is to have an orientation so that you can understand the lay of the land of the organization. They can tell you the history of the organization, how the organization operates, and so how you can best perform your duties. Once you know that information, it helps you do your job better. And communication is key. You should always expect communication, not only from the board, but also from the executive director as well. And to just make sure that you all know at any time what's happening within the organization. One of the boards that I served on actually is one that does adoption to foster care. And so it's really important that if something happens within one of the foster homes that we work with, that the board is made aware of it immediately. And we actually, our executive director does a great job of communicating with us if something happens. So just make sure that you're experiencing that same type of communication so that you'll understand what is happening and really what you are being held responsible for. And again, there are committees. You need to determine what committees you would like to serve on and where you would spend that time and how you can really assist that committee with the expertise that you have. And term limits is key. I know that most nonprofits, if you're serving, and many of you are serving on boards, I would encourage you to look at what your bylaws say about your term limits and see if you're following them accordingly. I know that some of the nonprofits that I've worked with, that does not always happen. There are some organizations that have board members that have been on there since its inception, some that's been there 20 or more years. And so you need to think about how that reflects in the work of the organization. It really does help the organization when it has new blood and fresh ideas. So you may want to make sure that whatever those term limits are, that you're paying attention to those and making sure that you're following them. And then to help with the strategy, that's one of the things that the nonprofit is really looking for you to do, is to help them strategize around how they can progress and how they can succeed and grow the organization. And so those are the things that they're expecting from you. And so when you're looking for that, make sure when you're asking those questions, be clear about what you're able to provide and that you will be able to meet the expectations that they have for you. And then joining the board, just a little graphic there that says that I attended my first board meeting and I was just elected to the board of an amazing organization. So do you think anyone will tell me what I'm supposed to do? I have talked with many nonprofits and many nonprofit board members, and many of them will share their frustration in joining a board and they did not receive a board orientation. That is really key to understanding what your role is on that board. You have your roles and your responsibilities, but when you're being onboarded onto the organization, it's really key to understand the history of the organization, to understand what's going on. And so there is a process for that. And typically what it looks like is that somehow you may have received an invitation. And if you are really proactive, you can find an organization, research for yourself, and then reach out to that organization. But in most cases, there's an invitation for you to participate, and there may be a board sponsor, someone you may have connected with who's already serving on board. And if you're looking as well, you can also ask your network. Individuals that you come in contact with who are in your circle may know of organizations who could utilize your talent and your skill. And so I would always check with those individuals to get some input. Some of them may be serving on that board. Have them share their experience with you about serving on that particular nonprofit. And the other way that you can learn more about those organizations is to attend events. And once you do so, it helps you to understand what they're working on in the community, how they're reaching out, and what their clients are looking for, or doing, or connecting to that nonprofit. And also the website is always there. Most nonprofits who are really moving towards success will definitely have a nonprofit that gives you quite a bit of information. You can go on there and find out who's currently serving on their boards and what they're looking for, where the funding is coming from. So it will give you some details in terms of the right decisions that you need to make to see if they're doing things in a manner in which you would like to participate. And then search for your passion. And I always tease the participants who are in our class to say that they want to join a board, and they're fascinated with the fact that someone is inviting them to join. But I always tell them that if you are not, if your passion does not relate to youth, and someone from the Boys and Girls Club asks you to join a board, that may not be the right board for you. And if it's not, there are several things that can happen that may be a detriment, because if you're not connected to a nonprofit serving on that board that requires quite a bit from you, if you're not passionate about the cause, more than likely you're not going to show up as often as you should, and you may not be as participatory in the activities of that organization. So make sure you find one that really pulls at your heartstrings, and if it does, you're going to be that person that's going to show up and will be the driving force for that organization. And then you serve on a committee or an advisory board, and that can give you, again, insight into what that organization is and what they do and how they operate. You do not have to be on the board in order to serve on a board committee. And so if you have an interest in, say, marketing, and you want to join the committee of an organization that you have passion around so that you can add your expertise to the organization, or serve on the advisory committee because it could be a pathway to their board, I encourage you to do that as well, because it gives you quite a bit of information. And you can also contact us at United Way, and we can just also share with you organizations that are looking. Have more than a list of 100 organizations in the greater Atlanta community who are raising their hands and saying, yes, we want individuals to serve on our board. But more than that, we want individuals who've already received board training so that they understand what their roles and their responsibilities are. And so once that happens, you're joining the board. There's a process. You've expressed interest, and many organizations will ask that you apply. There's an application process for you to do so, and you can complete that application, and then you can expect to have an interview with either the executive director and or the board chair. And so one of the things that I will tell you about the benefits of working with the nonprofit board. And if I'm not mistaken, many of you are entrepreneurs or have a small business. It can be a great opportunity for you to share your expertise, but to also meet a new network of individuals who you're able to that can assist you in making the impact in your career. It helps you to develop your team leadership skills, because when you're working on a board, if you haven't already done so, teamwork is key. And you really have to make sure that you bring your leadership skills to the table, because I will typically tell you that individuals who are serving on nonprofit boards are high-level individuals, and they are really there to focus and to make sure that they are able to lead the team properly. And so you need to make sure that you understand what that is. And it helps you to start thinking like a CEO, because you are, in fact, leading that organization. The organization was probably founded by an individual, created and grown. But what the board really needs to understand is that at the end of the day, when anything happens, success or failure, it all lays in the hands of the board of directors. The board is responsible for everything that happens within the organization. Yes, you have the executive director, but the executive director reports into the board. And I repeat that because many people are surprised when I say that. The executive director reports into the board. The board will then is responsible for hiring and or firing that executive director. And so just know that as you go in. So you're really thinking about thinking like that CEO when you're in that role. And it helps you to master budgets, because you really need to pay attention to the budget of the organization. That is a lifeline. That is what the board needs between the budgets and then the fundraising. It drives everything within the organization, the programming, because if you don't have the funds, you are not going to be able to have programs that are functioning for your clients to participate in. And then it helps you to identify your strongest skill set, and also maybe to grow others. And so you can make, even though you may have thought that your background in marketing was your strong suit, you may find out that you really do enjoy working on that program committee or that fundraising committee. So just spread your wings. It's a learning ground and a great opportunity for you to make that impact on your career and help you grow with that. And it also is a great opportunity for your company to be recognized and showing where you, as that company lead, is giving back to the community and helping to strengthen it. And then there are the best practices of the boards. And you have to be a mission ambassador. When you go out to the organization, and no matter where you are, if someone associates you with that organization, they're looking at you as a representative. And you should always reflect on the organization's mission and ensure that its activities, programs, and purposes continue to be positive in the community. You need to maintain financial viability, and I mentioned that earlier about fundraising, and definitely making sure that the organization is going to have the dollars that it needs to actually grow the programs and to make sure that the programs are healthy. And so as a board, you all need to set that financial strategy in place. If you know that it's going to take $1 million to run the programs that you want to do, you need to make sure you have a strategy in place in order to fundraise for those dollars throughout the year. Set those clear expectations. So if you know that you're expecting each board member to give at a certain level or to raise a certain amount of dollars, let them know that prior to them joining the board. Clarity is key so that people know what to expect. Those individuals would want to know exactly what the organization is wanting from them. And to have a conflict of interest policy, which is really important, because boards should really maintain that conflict of interest policy and require the board members to really complete it and disclose annually. Stay informed. Active participation includes attending board meetings. I can't say that enough. To attend your board meetings, participate on committees, and help to ensure the board keeps proper minutes, resolutions, and voting policies. There may be a case where you are not able to attend a meeting and there was an action passed that was very important to the organization. And you need to make sure that the minutes reflect the fact that you were not in attendance. And if you can just even state why you weren't there, but you just need to ensure and protect yourself that if there are any resolutions or policies that take place that later will be a bit risky for the organization, you can actually say, I was not at that meeting, and it's reflected in our minutes. So you need to make sure you are actively engaged in the organization, and one of the best ways to do so is to make sure that you attend the meetings and the committee meetings and activities of the organization. Also, another important thing is to govern and not manage. And I say that with organizations who are larger, typically have those governance boards where they come in and they make policies and they make decisions and they move on. There are other organizations that are much smaller where you may have to be more hands-on, but ideally those organizations are going to want to grow to the point where there's only governance. The board members they only have one employee, and that is the CEO and or the president or the executive director. I'm not sure which one. It could be either within that organization, but that's the only staff person that the board has. And so please be mindful of that, and you set clear and separate governance activities for that staff. You don't typically go beyond working with that individual. But again, the caveat to that is if it's a small organization, especially if it's a startup, the board would typically be more hands-on until it grows to the point where they are really only concentrating on governance. And then conduct board assessments. You need to determine how you're doing as a board, individually as well as a group. You need to make sure that you are, it's an important tool if the board wants to address their leadership gaps. And if you know that you have a board of 10 people, but the bylaws say that you can have 15, you need to look at who's currently serving on your boards before you fill those 5 seats, so you can determine what skill sets you're looking for, who do you need to add to the board. Look at the term limits and see who is actually going to be rolling off at some point, and decide what gaps are there that you need to fill. So don't just haphazardly recruit board members to join. Make sure you're doing it intentionally and ensuring that the board is not going to be in need of a skill that you can't add until a later date because you did not do your assessment. And again, confirm your D&O insurance, make sure that you have it, make sure that you see the dates of the insurance, and you can also make sure that you need to know what the coverages are. Onboarding, we talked about that. Make sure that there's a robust orientation program that includes a board manual for all new board members. The board manual will tell that individual everything that they should know about that nonprofit. It gives them details about how that organization operates. You should have your bylaws in there. You should have your policies and procedures. So when they are looking for that information, they can have it in one place and have everything that they need at their fingertips. And have a succession plan. Prioritize building a strong organization infrastructure to support the next generation of leaders at the board level and among staff. And so my term is up on my board in November, but and I knew that going in a year and a half ago, I started thinking about who could take my place on the board. So I was able to actively assist in recruiting individuals to come onto the board. So I am sure that once my term is up, that they will still be in a good place. So you need to make sure you have a succession plan for your nonprofit. And another little thing, apparently the chair made a list of those who could benefit from governance classes, and it turned out to be everyone. So I encourage you, if you are serving on boards, to get some training. If you're not currently serving and you're looking to find a nonprofit, definitely you need to understand what your roles and responsibilities are before you say yes to those. I'll tell you a little bit more about United Way VIP, and then we can go into the Q&A. Our program has been around for 28 years, and we provide board governance training for those individuals who are looking to connect to agencies in the community. Our goal is to really make sure that individuals have a clear understanding and clarity around what they are saying yes to. We provide the training 5 times per year, spring, summer, and fall. And because of COVID, we have since 2020, we've been actually offering our classes virtually, and have learned that that's one of the things that we will take with us, is to have a virtual component of the training. And we're trained typically 150 community leaders annually to connect to boards. And because of COVID and it's virtual, we were able to exceed that number of individuals. And for the first time, since we were virtual, we were able to include individuals from different cities. We had, I was telling Janice earlier that we actually had our first international participant who was with us this spring. He was actually originally in Singapore, but then moved to Thailand. We've had individuals also that were in Michigan and Ohio and in Alabama to participate in the program. And because of the virtual environment, they were able to do so. And they can take that back, the teaching back into the nonprofits in which they were working with, or recruit at an organization where they live. And so we've trained almost 3,000 individuals to serve on board, and 75% of those have gone on to serve on nonprofit boards. We recruit through recruitment tools for nonprofits in Greater Atlanta, because many of the nonprofits that come to us for some reason they say they have a hard time looking for individuals, especially individuals of color. And we're in Atlanta, so I don't know how hard that can be. But we work with those nonprofits to find great board members for them. And I think they do appreciate the fact that they're trained so they can go in and ask the questions that are needed, and they can actually provide the assistance and assist with this. We can assist with the skill sets of the board members that they're looking for. And we also do provide in-house training for companies and their employees as well. And who participates in our program? We have individuals who are community leaders who have never served on a board but are ready to start and step it up. We have current board members who said yes and didn't necessarily know what they were saying yes to. And so they're participating in the training as well so that they can have a clear understanding as to what their roles and responsibilities are. We have nonprofit executive directors who are wanting clarity on their board staff engagement and how best to work with their entire board. And we have community leaders who want to create their own nonprofits, and they want to ensure that they're laying the foundation properly before they do so. And so I think that's a great opportunity for those individuals to do that. And at the same time, they're in a room full of individuals who are looking to join a board and who may be able to actually join the board that they're creating. And so the requirements for our program is that we meet during the spring and fall, we meet 10 weeks, Monday or Wednesday evenings, typically from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And in the summer, we actually meet over 4 Saturdays, twice in June and twice in July. We've just recruited for our summer session, and we'll start that program June 12th. And you will have a copy of this link. And if you have an interest in participating in the summer session, I will give you the grace of completing the application and accepting that into the batch that we have now, if you're wanting to do so. But I will need to get that back quickly because, again, the training will start on June 12th. There is a $500 give or get fundraising assignment. And there's a one-time non-refundable fee of $100, which is the board commitment fee, and then a $400 fundraiser that is due at the end of the training. And all those funds go to support the program and support the work of United Way of Greater Atlanta. And then we ask that you commit to at least 1 board year, 1 board term when you've connected to that nonprofit. And we do assist our participants with connecting to nonprofit boards. When we're able to meet in person, we would have each year an annual board recruitment fair where we would actually go out, where we would have about 40 to 50 organizations in a room and invite our graduates to come out and have the opportunity to engage in dialogue with those executive directors and those board members so that they can connect and then maybe plan an opportunity to have an interview for board position at a later date. And we actually did that once per year. We also keep a track of all the organizations who are looking, and we include that in a member-only group that we have on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and we also include those opportunities in our newsletter. So we try to keep a running list of organizations so that our individuals, our graduates, and our leaders can have a place to go and a place to look for board service so that they can put their skills and their resources to use. And at the end of the day, one of the things that I tell our participants is that once you leave us and you're going to serve on a board, that all board members should have a voice. You have a voice, you need to use it. You need to focus on a common ground. You need to understand that everyone doesn't have to agree. You're not really on the board to make friends, and that's okay, but you can agree, in an agreeable manner. Be respectful and listen to the different voices at the table. Don't allow emotions to dictate decisions, and to get along well enough to get the job done. Because at the end of the day, the community is looking to the board to actually help them succeed within the organization. And with that, I'm open for questions. Sorry.
Okay. First of all, let me say thank you. As a former alumnus of the United Way program, I will tell you all that I was on 3 boards and I was asked about becoming the board chair, but felt I didn't know enough. So another friend of mine recommended me to the class because they had gone through it, and the information was so enlightening and so in depth. I got off that board because they did not have board insurance. But at the same time, I met 2 executive directors in the class and became a member of those boards. So it really puts you in a proper mindset to move forward. And I've used many of the lessons I've learned during this VIP training in other instances in work and even now at NCNW. So thank you, Janice, for.
And Johannes, you know what I forgot to add? I did forget this, and because people want to know what's included in the training, right? So we talk about the roles and responsibilities of serving on board. We talk about fundraising, marketing for nonprofits, legal and ethical decision making, financial management, marketing. I said that, and we also talk about crisis communication and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so those are all the things that pertain to individuals being able to effectively serve on boards, and we want to make sure that they get that across as well. And in the spring and fall, one of the things that we do want to teach and get across to our participants is the fact that the board interview is so important that we actually have a process where we match them to a nonprofit so they can understand how to interview as well.
Great. So let's start with the questions. The first question I have is, should an advisory board also be part of the board of directors?
No. The advisory board is there to advise. And as I mentioned earlier, I think that the best use of an advisory board is to make sure that you have individuals on there who can do exactly what they're charged to do, which is to advise. It's also a great place for those individuals who are rolling off of the board of directors so that you can still have them connected to the organization in some manner. But the advisory board does not have, there are no fiduciary duties where they have, and so they're there to assist you in depending upon the nonprofit, they may meet only once or twice a year, or they're called upon when needed, but they are not a part of the board.
Okay. This individual lives in East St. Louis, excuse me, East St. Louis, and want to know, do you have contacts in that area, or how can they find out about being on boards in that area?
If you download the handout, my email is there, and we have programs throughout at United Ways throughout the nation. All of them are not the same, but some are a little different. But I'll check and see if there's something in East St. Louis. But just reach out to me, and I'll find that information out for you.
Should the principal of the nonprofit be on the board of directors?
And principal, I'm assuming the executive director, CEO.
Yes.
Best practice, I will tell you, is I would say no. They will be there at each board meeting, but they are a staff person. Have I seen boards where that person is on the board? Yes, I have.
Do nonprofits pay their board members anything?
They should not. They're all they should be volunteers. If you are on a board if you're a corporate board member, you typically get paid for that. But nonprofit board members are doing it because for the love of the community, and so they're volunteers.
Okay. With the exception of the annual financial requirements for the nonprofit board membership, would you say that the best practices for both nonprofit boards and government boards and commissions are pretty much the same?
Not necessarily. There are some things, I think that's why you have to really be clear when you're interviewing those nonprofits. When I tell people that when you see one nonprofit, you see one nonprofit because in some cases they operate differently. There are things that you will do for a nonprofit that you may or may not do on a commission. So you need to be really clear about when you're interviewing those organizations, what your duties will be. because it could look different depending upon the organization that you're serving on.
Great. Is virtual training currently available for out-of-state participation?
Yes, it is. And I'll go back to the summer session. We're doing that now. We're meeting 4 Saturdays, twice in June, twice in July. We do have 2 sessions per day, so it's a long day. We have one training that starts from 9, goes until 11:30, and then we take a break, and we're back at 12:30, and we'll go to 3. And so I tell you that it's a bit time consuming, but I know we have many of the some of the alumni in the audience now, but the time goes by much quicker than you would expect. When we get started, we're almost done in no time, because we're really engaged in the work that we're doing and the questions and the discussions.
When is your next session starting in the fall? Do you already know?
Yes, it starts in September. I don't have my calendar, I'm sorry. I think it's around September 13th or so, but that session is 10 weeks, and you meet either on a Monday evening or Monday or Wednesday evening, not both, Monday or Wednesday for 10 weeks, as opposed to the 4 Saturdays.
Would you speak about the fiduciary responsibility of board members to an organization? Monitoring financial reports, corporate filings, tax filing, stuff like that.
Definitely, those are things that you really have to pay attention to. The most important is that you really need to pay attention to your finances. Hopefully, if you're on a board, you're getting monthly financial statements so that you can understand what's going on within the organization. If you don't understand what it says or what is reporting, you need to make time to speak with the financial expert in your organization so that they can explain it to you. You need to also make sure that you are ensuring that the organization gets an audit every year. You need to make sure that they have insurance. You need to make sure, when you're talking about the fiduciary, especially, you need to make sure that you're paying attention to the duties. You have the duty of loyalty, the duty of care, and I'm forgetting one more, but you need to make sure that you're paying attention to those. Make sure that you have your conflict of interest form signed. You need to make sure you have the correct policies in place that fit your organization. Some of the policies that will work with one organization may not work within the other. So you need to take a look at that. Always stay current with make sure your bylaws are speaking to the way in which you operate. I know many organizations may have probably took a look at their bylaws when we were going through COVID, because many of them probably didn't even bring attention to meeting virtually. So you need to make sure that how you're managing and operating your nonprofit is in accordance to your bylaws, so so that you won't be out of order. But there are a list of things that you need to pay attention to in order to ensure that that you are doing everything you need to do to ensure the success of the organization.
Can you speak to the value of having a formal agreement like a memorandum of understanding when partnering with other organizations?
So to be clear with that, you need to understand how you're going to work together. There are, at each memorandum may look different depending upon how you're working and partnering with those organizations. So you need to make sure that language is very clear. I would actually have someone, an attorney, look at that to make sure that everything is in accordance to the way that you want it set up. Depending upon the programs that you're working with or are partnering with, you need to make sure you understand who's going to be doing what the responsibilities are, what you're saying yes to, and you need to make sure that you understand how long this partnership is going, how people are operating within those guidelines, because if it doesn't, it's not really helpful if only one group is understanding or one group is working in accordance to that. You need to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Both organizations will need to make sure that their CEOs or their staff person who will be managing that process is aware of all the details of what needs to happen. But again, each one will look different depending upon the organizations in which you're working. So you need to be really clear about what the responsibilities are for each organization.
Okay, this is a statement says, I am a chair of a nonprofit board, and after listening to you, I'm going to ask the executive director to send me the updated copy of bylaws to review for our entire board. So thank you.
If you haven't taken a look at your bylaws in a while, you definitely need to. The bylaws actually inform you on how you should be managing your organization. I'm in the process now of working with our agency and my other board members to update our bylaws. It's not a short process. It's not an easy process, and but you need to make sure that you are operating accordingly. If you have policies that affect the well-being of organizations, you need to take a look at those to make sure that they're the ones that work best for you. Because what worked for you when you started the program in 1985 may not be what you need to have in place now. You may need to update that information. So you really need to take a look at your bylaws to make sure that they are still speaking to the organization as it is now.
What is the best practices for term limits for board members?
What I've seen most is typically that you are able to have 3 2-year terms, and then you may take an absence for a year, and then you can be voted back into the board. So it's typically 2 3-year terms or 3 2-year terms. I said that correctly, but typically it's like 6 years. And you may need to take a break, or you should take a break after that, allow others in, and then you can come back. But it's an opportunity to give you a break, but also allow others to join the organization and add their voice to the table.
Would you please give a couple specific ways to connect to the board as a new member?
To connect to the board as a new member or a board that they're looking to connect to? I'm sorry, I know, Janice, you don't know the answer to that question.
I'm a new member of the board. How do I get to know the other board members?
Oh, so I will tell you that I absolutely think it's a must that number one, you need to have a meeting with your board chair, your executive director. I also encourage you to have tea time, coffee time with the other members of your board. Get to know them all, because they will all have a different perspective as to what's happening on the board. And it's also important to build that rapport and build those relationships with those individuals, because they're going to be the group that you're going to be operating with to help that organization succeed. You need to know who you're working with, and you need to know why they're at the table. You may assume that we're all there for the same reason, but in actuality, we're probably not. So you need to understand and be clear about what drove them or what brought them to that organization. And it helps you actually help manage that relationship and help you work better with that. And also hearing of the different perspectives as to where they each think the nonprofit is. So I think working within those with those relationships, having coffee, having tea, serving on the committees will really help you get to know individuals quite a bit as well, because you're working in smaller groups. And so I encourage you to be intentional about getting to know the folks that you're serving with, because they're the ones who you're going to be going through, I mean, either through the fire or through the cheering with or whatever. But you need to make sure you understand who they are, and they need to know who you are, so you all can understand why you're there working for the betterment of that organization.
This particular individual is a graduate of the United Way Blueprint Leadership Program in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Is that program similar to yours?
Yes, very similar. Mm-hmm.
Do you distinguish nonprofit board president's responsibilities from executive director responsibilities?
Oh, definitely, yes. There are the responsibilities for the board, and then the executive director will have responsibilities that they have that will do the day-to-day operations of the organization, and they report into the board. But there are clear duties and they're separate from the board. The board will have oversight over the entire organization, where the executive director will have day-to-day management of the organization, and everything that happens again day to day is going to be led by the CEO of the organization, and the board will they will then report everything into the board. But the board should also provide some type of some planning for that executive director as well, and guide them into some key areas where they need to actually manage the organization. And so hopefully what they're doing is to make sure that that is being measured by the strategic plan. And so those goals that they're given to the executive director will be monitored, hopefully annually, so that they can ensure that they're headed in the right direction. But they have separate duties.
Do most organizations have a supervisory committee within the board, especially banking organizations? Is that something familiar?
I'm not sure about that. It could, because I'm not clear about the workings of the banking community, but typically within the nonprofit, you will have an executive committee, and that's typically made up of the officers who function, who in some cases when their activity that needs to happen immediately on the board and the entire board can't get together, you will have an executive committee that can actually meet and make decisions. And the co-chair and the chair.
Often, go ahead. Continue.
I'm sorry. And the chair of the board is the person that should lead those conversations and guide the board.
How often should bylaws be updated, and can there be procedures and policies in addition to the bylaws? Will that vary from one state or organization to another?
There are different state regulations, so you need to check with your Secretary of State on that. But I would check your bylaws at least 3 to 4 times, 3 to 4 times every 3 or so years, I'll say, and to make sure that you're staying within the scope of work that you're doing. And like now, it's an opportunity for agencies to take a look at those bylaws so that they can see if they are running the organization properly, for instance, about the virtual meetings, but also one of the simple things that especially organizations that were formed years ago may have mentioned in their bylaws is that you will receive notification via US mail. And in most cases, we are now using using email to really let individuals know about board meetings. So you need to go in and look at information to make sure that not only if there's something that can be removed, but if there's something that needs to be added to the bylaws. And you can have policies that are separate from the bylaws themselves, especially as it helps you to actually manage the day-to-day of the organization. So yes, definitely make sure that you're looking at them and make sure that you have the right policies in place as well.
What committees do you believe should exist on the board along with marketing and finance?
I think it also depends on the focus of the organization. For some organizations, they need a program committee. For some, they may not. But you definitely should have a fund development committee. You should have one that focuses on if it's programming related. You should have one that's related to programming, definitely a governance committee. The governance committee is typically the heartbeat of the board in itself, because it helps with the recruitment. It helps manages all the information that relates to the bylaws and the policies. So you definitely need to have your governance committee. You may want to have fundraising, the fund development committee. So depending upon the work that you're doing, it may look a little different. Some organizations will say that they may not need a marketing committee, but I think that they do. But so you need to just really look at the work of your organization to determine what works best within your group. And it could be that you start out with 1 or 2 committees, and then as you grow, you may add others.
Will you go over again the fees for board training?
Yes, for our training, we model out our fee over with the board give and get. And as a board member, when you join a board, they will ask that you give of yourself, you give a personal gift to the organization, and then that you get. That meaning you go out and fundraise for the organization, be it with your network, with your employer, to make sure that the funds are there for the organization. For the purpose of our program, we ask that individuals give a $100 board commitment fee once they've been approved to be in the program, and then by the end that they raise an additional $400. We assist with them, in terms of helping them think about strategies in doing so. What's been happening with us now that we've been in virtual and in COVID is that we've been using our peer-to-peer fundraising tool, and which is very successful for our participants. We had someone in our current class, actually, for the first time, he's raised more than anyone else, about $4,200, and his goal was $500. We've had individuals to raise $3,000. So it depends. And the tools that you use during this for our program are the same tools that once you walk away, you can do that. You can utilize those for the organizations in which you serve as well.
There's a statement here saying it should be the responsibility of the board to train its board members and provide all necessary tools to govern. It is not the responsibility of the executive director. Ditto the board chair being responsible for guiding the board, not the executive director. Is that a true statement, I guess?
Could you repeat that last statement, Janice?
It should be the responsibility of the board to train its board members and provide all necessary tools to govern. This is not usually the responsibility of the executive director.
So I think that in a way, yes, I'll say that. But the thing about it is that, for instance, if you're on a startup board and there's not much funding, in many cases, you may be able to find an organization that can provide free training for your entire board. But if not, then in most cases, there's going to be a fee associated with that. And not even like with ours, there is a fee. So if the organization is so small that it can't afford that, it's going to be very hard for them to assume that role. So as a volunteer who's lending their skills and expertise to that nonprofit, I encourage everyone to get the training that they need in order to be a great board member. The organization they're not going to require, I think they should require that there's some training associated with their board members and the board service. But some of them will include in their budget that information that it happens and funds for them to do so. I think that's very admirable of them to do that. If you are interested in serving on a board and they will not provide that training, or they don't provide that training, but yet you still want to be involved, I think it's incumbent upon that person to receive that training. And it could be that they also, if can assist. I know one organization that I worked with, because they wanted their board members to be trained, they actually they provided the funding for it. So I think everyone paid a certain amount of money so that they can all receive that training, because it does benefit the organization. It benefits the board members as well. but not all boards will take on that responsibility. And that may or may not be the place for you.
Okay, last two questions.
Okay.
What are the best practices for board parliamentary procedures?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. I just had someone train on that the other day. I think that because things are changing, I want to say that it goes back to the training. I think that you need to have. It's not enough to just have one or two individuals to know what those policies, those procedures are. I think it's a great idea to bring someone in so that they can train the entire board, because everyone does not understand the procedures that are in place. And so for the organization, in order for them to especially have a smoother board meeting, it's a great idea to bring someone in and provide that training for them.
Okay, and last question is, I haven't been on the board in a while, and I'm looking at serving on a new board. It's been over 10 years. Should I consider board training again?
Absolutely. I think you should. I think everyone should receive some type of training. And there's so many different opportunities out there. There's so many different aspects of training. There are things that are happening within the community now that affects boards that you need to really pay attention to. For instance, in terms of funding, there are many organizations out there who are funding organizations, especially as it relates to DE&I. And before you can get that funding, there are certain things that you need to have in place. One of the boards that I'm on now, we are actually in the process of getting accreditation. But in order to do so, you have to have so many things in place. And so it feels like I'm being trained all over again in terms of what's happening within our organization, because we need to, in order to get to receive that accreditation, we have to have our ducks in a row. So it's looking at things now and understanding what we need to process. And so board training can never get old. There's always things that you can learn. It can take you to the next level. You can serve as a board member now, but as Janice mentioned before, you can move from being a board member into being a board chair. That's a different skill set. You really need to make sure that the skills that you have are going to lead you in the right direction and serve you properly for the position that you have on that nonprofit board.
Okay, the very last question. Where can I find a listing of nonprofit boards? This person happens to be in Chicago. Somebody also asked that from California. Is there a nationwide listing somewhere?
I don't know if there's a nationwide listing. A couple of things that I will tell you is that you can go to it's the guidestar.org, GUIDE star.org, and it's actually the site that you can go to pull any 990 from a nonprofit. But if you just go to that site and put in your city or your state, nonprofits will populate it, so you can see exactly who's there. There's also another resource, I believe, is greatnonprofits.org, if I'm not mistaken. I will also share this with Janice, and if there's somewhere where he can add it later, then he can do that. But you can put in your state there, and nonprofits will be listed. I would also suggest, I have to say, that you should go to your local United Way. It may not share with you all of the nonprofits in your city, but definitely the ones that are working, who are partnering with United Way. You can find those at your local United Ways. And also, if you have community foundations and or nonprofit resource centers, I would try those as well. Here in Georgia, you can try the Georgia Center for Nonprofits. There's typically something similar to that in your state as well.
Well, great. Thank you so much, because what we have left in the question sections are excellent presentation. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and great thanks. So I think we've answered all the questions for tonight. Again, if you'd like to see this again, it will be on the NCNW website in the upcoming week, along with the attachment PDF. If you are not a member of NCNW, please consider joining. And that's also going for men, you may know, because we have a male association section of NCNW, and there's probably at least 2 sections, either college and community, in your town. Ms. Robinson, I thank you. I truly appreciate this, and have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.